everyone. Welcome to this new episode of our Student Spotlight series, where we are able to showcase some of the work our past students have done. I'm Charlotte, one of the outreach coordinators here at CCIR, and it's our pleasure today to have Yasmeena with us, who did one of our Future Scholars Program courses. So firstly, can you just introduce yourself? So tell us where you're from, what year you are in school, and then which course you took.
Yeah, of course. So, hi everyone. My name is Yasmeena Khalife. I was in the 2023 Summer Future Scholars Program. I was in the Cell and Developmental Biology course under the mentorship of Mamiko Ujima and TA Professor Kung Dang. I'm a senior. I'm in 12th grade at Wakeland High School, and I'm currently living in Frisco, Texas.
Great. So can you give us an overview of what your course looked into, and then maybe kind of a brief description for anyone that's not familiar with the subject?
Yeah, of course. So really, biology in and of itself is the study of life. And when we're looking at cell and developmental biology, we are looking specifically into how do cells grow? How do cells divide? How do cells function? How do they undergo certain processes? And more specifically, in the developmental perspective, is how does this develop over time? So we have looked into, how different types of cells can grow, how they divide, how they differentiate. And we've looked at all these different processes, and we've looked at in terms of many different types of cells. So again, there's so many different types of cells in the body. There's fibroblast cells, there's epithelial cells, there's stem cells. And so we've looked at the process of how they grow and how they divide in each one. And so I definitely feel like this was such an interesting course, because it really gains perspective on really the smaller, building blocks of what makes you, right? It is because cells are the foundation of every living organism.
And then what interested you in taking this course or in learning more about cell biology?
Yeah, well, I think it's because all diseases and physiological conditions originate to some extent on a cellular level. And I was always very passionate about understanding how does certain diseases, how do they develop? And I wanted to see it from a cellular level. How does this occur? And I think cell and developmental biology definitely gave a great segue into that, because it truly allows you to understand how do certain conditions happen, how do they perpetuate from just looking at cells and how they develop, and how, if there's anything that goes wrong in the growing and the dividing and the differentiating of the cell, it could have large repercussions on the entire organism.
And then had you had experience with this subject in school before?
I had very limited experience, but I was very familiar with just the general biology. If you're familiar with it, like AP biology, I think that was the extent to the biology knowledge I learned. But I definitely knew a lot about certain topics before coming in, and just the general, foundation, so that this course could really elevate and get me more into depth into the topic of cells and development.
Great. So it sounds like you were really able to kind of get into that niche that you're interested in, which is great. So now we're just going to shift and talk about your specific research project. So firstly, can you tell us a bit of what it was about, maybe the title, and then a general synopsis?
Yeah, so my research title was called A Comprehensive Review of Aging, From Metabolic Mechanisms to Societal Implications. It's a long title, but it basically gives you a summary of what I really researched. So I was always fascinated with the process of aging. It is extremely important if you think about it, especially as like the share of, older people is growing everywhere. And so that's really why I was interested in this topic. But really, I wanted to find out, I wanted to answer really three questions. How does aging occur on a cellular, molecular, and metabolic level? What is the relationship between aging and disease? And then finally, what are some like therapeutics and lifestyle interventions that we can prevent the process of aging with? And so that's definitely just like an overview. But really, aging is this like physiological decline in structure and function with relation to time. And you can see how this definitely can manifest on a cellular level. And it happens to, and really, if you think about it, it happens to all different types of cells. It can occur in a epithelial cell, the same as a stem cell. And yeah, so that's just an overview.
And then can you walk us through your research methods? So what type of research you conducted and then what the process was like for finding and analyzing data?
Yeah. So, and I feel like this is where the course especially helped me because it allowed for me to kind of broaden my scope of how research can be done. Because if you think about research, you might think that research can only be done in a lab, but that's not true because you have a world of information at your disposal with just a Google search. And so this is where the course really did help me. And it kind of opened my eyes to, wow, there is lots of information online that you can pull, that you can use, that you can synthesize to make your own conclusions. And so I think that was just a general process that I took to do my research. But really, what I did was I also looked into a lot of medical publications online, a lot of research publications online. And I obviously read them, annotated them, and tried to pull out bits and pieces that I found were very important to answer those three questions I mentioned earlier. Um, and then I looked at the methodologies, kind of understand and get a feel for how different conclusions were made in every research paper. And then, I brought them all together. And that was really just my research process.
Great. And then can you walk us through your findings and tell us kind of what you found? Was anything surprising? What was most interesting?
Yeah. So, what really surprised me is that there's so many ways that cells develop and change as we grow. And you might not think this is true because, um, we still are breathing and living. And it's like, what is the difference? What is changing really? But there are lots of changes that cells occur as we age. In fact, there are 9 different hallmarks of aging that you might be familiar with, but let me just pull them up real quick. Yeah. So there are 9 different hallmarks of aging that cells actually undergo. And I'm going to read them all to you, but there's altered intercellular communication. So difference in how cells communicate. Again, cell communication is crucial in maintaining this homeostasis throughout the body. Stem cell exhaustion. Again, different types of cells, like stem cells, will change as we age and as we develop. Cellular senescence. This is one of my favorite hallmark of aging to discover because it is really just when the cell stops dividing altogether. So we see this characteristic growth in the cell, becomes less efficient, and it becomes resistant to apoptosis, which, if you think about it, if any time a cell resists death, sounds bad, but we need that cellular division in order to regenerate, if you think about it. So that's definitely one of my favorite to learn about, cellular senescence. And cellular senescence has a lot of similarities with cancer and other diseases. So that was one of my favorite. Of course, there's also mitochondrial dysfunction. Again, mitochondria is the energy producer in the cell. It is very important to power some of the processes within the cell. And if we're becoming less efficient, we're not able to be at that optimum level for the cell. Deregulated nutrient sensing. This goes kind of really well with altered intracellular communication, but it is just the ability to stop sensing nutrients and certain communication ligands as well. And of course, lots of proteostasis. Proteins are essential throughout the body. They make up a lot of us. It's a major biomolecule. And if we're losing that, it's protein homeostasis, proteostasis, then it has major repercussions throughout the body, and it can definitely accelerate aging as well. And of course, there's telomere attrition. So telomeres, again, these are the protective caps that are found on the ends of DNAs. And so what happens as we age and as cells divide and divide, the telomeres actually start to shorten and shorten and shorten. And this can be very problematic for the cell, because what if they shorten so much that we actually starts damaging DNA? And DNA damage, you'll find, is that it is one of the major proponents of aging. It's a major inducer of all these different aging hallmarks of aging. And of course, there's also genomic instability. Again, DNA, genetics, and this division of DNA over and over can definitely create this instability, can lead to DNA damage, and the DNA damage response can again lead to lots of different implications on the well-being of the body. And lastly, it's epigenetic alterations. Again, epigenetics is all about how we convert the messages encoded in DNA into, things that are useful for the cell. And so if we're having these epigenetic alterations, the end results could be really different, and can lead to the cell not doing things it's supposed to. But yeah, those are the 9 hallmarks of aging, and each one has so much information on it that you can learn about. You can study in a more deeper, study it deeply and understand it more. But I definitely think what surprised me the most is just how much changes as we age. And it's something that we need to definitely study, because we see this relationship between aging and the increased susceptibility to disease, and aging and this decrease in physiological function, structure. And so I think it's definitely worth studying more for sure.
Yeah. And then I know you mentioned in the beginning that you wanted to look into kind of therapeutics regarding aging. Did you include that in your findings? Did you want to highlight a few?
Yeah, of course. So we definitely, no matter any disease and process, a lot of it is caused by lifestyle factors. Lifestyle factors play a huge role on, the things that are occurring in the body. And it's crazy to believe that the things we do can impact cells that are super duper small, but they do. And so there's so many different ways that we can actually prevent aging, or at least prevent it and keep it from being too extreme, I guess. So one of the main ways that I found, and these are just lifestyle factors, and I'll get to like the more like lab and therapeutics that have been found. But one of the major ways is through diet, of course. Diet enriched in antioxidants. So antioxidants help combat reactive oxygen species, which are major sort of molecules that can ameliorate and accelerate aging. And so that is definitely one of the major things, is having a very good diet, protecting yourself from sunlight as well. Again, sunlight is a major source of vitamin D, which can help keep bones strong. But of course, also sunlight can cause DNA damage. And so that can lead to the DNA damage response and other things like that. But again, those are some lifestyle factors. There's so many different ways: getting enough sleep, making sure that you take care of your body, you exercise, things like that. Those can truly put off aging. And especially in terms of neurodegeneration, that can definitely help with that aspect. Now, of course, there are also more lab-based therapeutics that we can talk about. For instance, induced pluripotent stem cells are a major new discovery that is very important and can have huge impact on how we can prevent aging. So again, embryonic stem cells are highly pluripotent. They can differentiate into virtually any different type of cell you can think of. And if we can somehow get those cells to sort of and implant them into a human adult body cell, body organism, we can maybe have those cells regenerate and make new cells, and they can differentiate into any different type of cell possible. So that's definitely one important way, an important therapeutic that I've also found. Also, there are reprogramming factors. So again, this is when we bring adult body cells, and then we take like somatic adult body cells, and then we expose them to reprogramming factors. And then this, again, can turn them into induced pluripotent stem cells, and then those can differentiate. But again, reprogramming factors is also extremely important because they can help induce pluripotent stem cell as well. Yeah, I think that's really it. There's a lot of different ones. Also, a lot of hormone therapeutics as well, especially hormone therapeutics. There's also like cellular senescence. Like there's different types of drugs that are being produced that help combat a certain type of hallmark of aging. So for instance, for cellular senescence, there's these types of drugs called senolytic cells, which help overcome and kind of get rid of these and kind of manage the senescent cells as well. So yeah, there's lots of different therapeutics. Yeah.
It seems like you really kind of went extremely in depth with this paper, which is really cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
and like you got a lot of information. And it's in a very, like you were saying before, each one of those 9 things that you were talking about before, you can go into a whole deep dive on each
That's
one.
true.
So I can get how it all piles up.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so now we're just going to shift to talk about your general experience with CCIR and with your course. So firstly, can you tell us what your experience was like in the program doing a high-level research project like this as a high school student?
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it was extremely valuable for me because I was not only able to pursue something I'm passionate about, which is biology and cellular biology, but it also, one thing that it's very hard to do when you're a high school student is to gain perspective of the research world and the world of medicine and the world of really just biology in general. And I think that's one thing that I found extremely meaningful in the course, is to gain perspective. And I learned so much about really the world of research. And I never knew it was possible to write a research paper just using Google and using the wealth of information you can find online. But I think this is one of the major things that CCR is going to leave me with. It's the ability to it's the ability to write different papers like this, and to really explore things without having to be in the lab. So I think that's extremely meaningful as a high school student.
Great. And then can you tell us what this research process was like or kind of your experience? I know you said that this was your first time writing a research paper like this. Can you tell us in general what that process was like compared to other papers or projects that you've done for other classes in school?
Yeah, for sure. I think what's very cool about this is that it's very independent, right? It is you in charge of your own research. It is you in charge of really finding out what you are passionate about and researching it and to the fullest depth and extent. And I think that's one of the major things that I really liked about this, is that you pick a topic that you find truly interesting, that you are passionate about, and you can really research anything about it and research it to the depth that you want to as well. And I think that's extremely useful and meaningful as a high school student, again, because it allows for you to gain on your understanding and gain more understanding about your own passions. So yes.
And then what was your experience like working with the other students in your course?
Yeah. So I think one of the major experiences that I had was getting to hear about different people and different research projects. So, which I think was extremely interesting because, yes, cell and developmental biology it's this huge field. And so one of my members also was talking about neurodegeneration and the glucose and the role inside the brain. You know, there's lots of glucose channels there. Another person was talking about mRNA and these different types of RNAs. I was talking about aging, and I forgot. Yeah, and the last one was talking about epigenetics, especially during embryonic development. So it was just crazy how different paths were taken. And I feel like every session I was able to not only talk about my own topic and learn about it, but I also could learn about different topics within the realm of cell and developmental biology, which I found truly, truly interesting. So I think it's just the other students were there to truly give you more information about that topic for sure.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point that even though all of your research papers are different, there is so much overlap because it's within the same subject that you're able to hear questions, maybe questions that they asked, or hear ideas that you wouldn't have necessarily thought of, but end up helping you with your own research.
For sure.
Okay, and then my next question is about the mentorship that you received from your TA and your mentor. So can you tell us how they helped guide you through the process of the first half of the course where you're learning more theory, learning more about the subject, and then into the research-oriented latter half of the course where you really started that research process? Can you help us, or can you explain to us kind of how they helped guide you through that process?
Yeah, for sure. So again, in the beginning, we definitely learned major college level, really, information about, some, theoretic stuff and some major processes that occur, whether that is embryonic development. We learn the stages of embryonic development and the stages of stem cell development. We've learned about how different types of differentiation, anti-differentiation. So we definitely learned some of the major topics within cell and developmental biology and hit on each one of those. And of course, also in the beginning half, we also learned about how do we write science papers, really. Again, scientific writing is very different than regular writing, right? It has to be concise, it has to be accurate, it has to be detailed, but also has to make sense. So it is really just a combination of all different factors. And that goes into scientific writing. And I think one of the major things that helped guide me through the process was learning how to write it, how to shift my because I used to be really wordy. I used to include too much details in a sentence, but really it was about finding ways to be more concise, more clear for any type of science audience. And of course, the second half, we started to have more one-on-one sessions between and learning more about your individual research project. So they helped guide me really closing in on a topic, making sure I know exactly what I want to research. Also helped me just find different ways to research, different ways to conclude different things, what to include, what not to include. So yeah, it was definitely it was such an amazing process to be part of and to experience.
Great. And just a few more questions for you. Firstly, do you think this course has given you any insights into your future? Has it maybe shaped how you think of your path moving forward in terms of your career or maybe what you want to study in uni?
Yeah, definitely. I was able again to gain perspective I was already really passionate about biology. And when I came in, I was truly able to gain perspective on it and was like, wow, yes, this is definitely something I want to learn more about and I want to pursue. And so definitely I want to pursue something with biology in uni. And of course, I do want to maybe possibly go into medical school and learn about how the bridge between research and clinical, medicine and the research the combination between both of them.
Great. And then my last question for you, can you tell me what you would say to someone who asked you what the value of doing a project or a program like this is, especially for a high school student?
Yeah, I think it's the main. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. Basically, do you have any advice for someone who
Mm,
asked what the value of doing a project or a program like this is?
yeah. Um, I think the value of doing a project like this is that you are exploring your own passions. And I think that is something that is truly invaluable because if you're interested about something, this is a great way to learn more about that topic. and learn more about and gain perspective and really get into that field. And I think that is truly the value, because really exploring a passion is something that is very difficult to do sometimes as a high school student. And I think doing a project like this can truly elevate your own research and your own understanding of this topic and make you more ready for as you enter into college, for sure.
Great. I think that's great advice. So that's the end of our spotlight interview. Thank you so much for chatting to me, and congratulations again on your nomination to our series.
Thank you so much.